Okay, sit down. Sit down. I hope you have something to drink because I'm spilling the tea today on some astrology assumptions that need to be in the bin, like you need to throw them out. Okay, and these are assumptions that I see all the time, not just on social media, but like in my own comments, in my own DMs. And I'm like, like I understand where they come from, but a lot of these assumptions are just keeping you in a cycle of fear and not actually helping to empower you in any way. So these assumptions, we're gonna throw them out today, okay? Like take them, bunch them up, and we're just gonna throw them away. Now, I will say I do love how pop astrology has put astrology on the map for more people. However, a lot of the things that pop astrology and pop astrologers say and teach is again just rooted in fear and rooted in simplifying astrology down to absolutes, which it is simply not about. Like, I feel like recently in my client sessions, I've been doing a lot more uneducating than I have been actually educating and teaching them more about themselves. And a lot of that comes from things that they've heard, whether it's been something that they've actively sought out or whether they've just heard in passing. So these assumptions really do a lot of damage, whether you've intentionally sought them or whether you've just, unintentionally heard something and it's just stuck in your subconscious. And that is why I'm not sugarcoating anything that I say in this video. I will stand by everything that I say. And I want to stress again, like I really empathize with and I understand where these assumptions come from and where people might really, really believe them. I feel like I also went through that kind of phase in the beginning of my journey. But again, astrology is not fear-based. It's not meant to keep you small or make you feel scared or make you feel stuck. Okay, so we are setting the record straight today. And before we dive in, I just want to remind you, truly ethical and empowering astrology is a mirror for you to better see yourself, is for you to reflect on whatever is going on in your life right now, whatever you're experiencing right now. It's a map to explore all the different parts of who you are. And that really is the lens through which I teach and I use astrology. It's not about limiting you or being like, you can do this or you shouldn't do that. It's a reclamation of a truth that you know energetically is within yourself. So with that being said, let's get started. The first assumption is that the basics, like your sun, moon, and rising, are boring and they don't hold as much insight as something as niche and specific would, like your specific degrees of a certain planet. And that is just simply not true. Like in pretty much, I would say over 90% of my client readings and my client sessions, we stick to sun, moon, rising. There is so much to be unearthed in sun, moon, rising alone. Sometimes, honestly, I've had a few sessions where I haven't even gone into sun, moon, rising because we've just been on the elements themselves. It is absolutely not true that you have to know all the advanced stuff to really get something out of astrology. When you skip to the advanced stuff, especially before you even have your foundations and your basics down, that kind of feels like you're trying to read and understand Shakespeare when you've just managed to read the alphabet. It's like, okay, how do I do calculus when you've just learned addition and subtraction? Think about like building something, right? Like if you don't have a solid foundation, everything else you build on top is not really going to be that steady. And that's why your foundations, your elements, sun, moon, rising, how do you interpret each individual placement using planet, sign, and house? They are your absolute basics that you have to be so confident in. And then you can move to more advanced stuff. And I'm not saying that you can't look into and research into more advanced stuff until you have that absolutely solid. No, but what I am saying is make sure that you are not bypassing your foundations, because there is so much that comes from those foundational parts. I can understand why you want to get into the more niche things, because it is cool. It is really cool to learn about them. But it also comes from wanting answers really fast, right? It's like, oh my gosh, sun, moon, rising is this. Okay, but like, what about my Chiron? What about like this fixed star? Like, I want to find a quick answer. And a lot of the time, I really blame this on a societal thing, because I feel like societally, we're so conditioned to fix things instead of like sitting with our discomfort and sitting with the experience of what's going on. We go straight into our heads. We go straight into like, let me find the answer, because if I find the answer, then that will solve my problems. When it's like, no, actually, we just have to sit with our problems sometimes, and we really have to feel the experience of what it's like to be human and to go through these life phases that we go through. And also, when you are just focusing on something super specific, something super niche, if you don't have those foundations, you don't have the context around like the rest of the chart. You're just hyper fixating on this tiny thing, right? Instead of actually seeing the bigger picture and seeing how it fits into the bigger picture. So essentially what you're doing there is you're just like nitpicking little bits that you want to pull together, and you're just collecting these like random facts, but the puzzle is not puzzling. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not going to help you really do anything, because you're just like, okay, cool. Yeah, this fixed star is about this. And like, I have this at this degree, but like, what does that actually tell you? What does it actually say? Do you know day to day how to actually get your elements back in balance? How do you actually feel your energy shift? How do you actually shift the patterns that you're in? Whether it is like a physical habit or it's like a mental pattern that's going on. Do you know how your mind works? Not really, if you're just focusing on these like tiny details, okay? So start with your foundations, master your building blocks, never, ever, ever bypass them, because that is so much of what really is going to give you a very grounded and tangible experience of astrology. This is something that I get all the time, where people are just like, okay, yeah, I know that this is my placement, but like, what does it mean? This is where you learn what it means for you. And once that happens, then all these more specific things are really going to make sense. Because then you can be like, okay, cool. Yeah, in the context of my chart, the bigger picture, my experience in my chart and living my chart, I see where this has an impact, or where this is influencing me, or how it is interacting with other placements in my chart. You know what I mean? So that is kind of the first assumption. You do not need to know every single little detail about astrology to change your life. In fact, in my Astrology Academy, like the very first level, we focus on elements, and that is already life-changing, okay? So it's not about knowing enough, it's about knowing what to do with what you're learning on every single level of astrology. Okay, number 2. The second assumption is that this placement is bad. How do I fix this bad placement that I have? So this is a classic beginner trap that people can fall in. Is like, oh, if you have this placement, it's really bad for you. If you have Saturn in your 7th house, you're never gonna have a relationship, or you're never gonna be able to, your relationships are always gonna suffer, or whatever it is. Okay, this is not true. It's just simply not true. Every single placement has a positive way that it can manifest, and also a negative way that it can manifest. Now, it is true that some placements might be more challenging. So let's say with a moon, right? If you have a Scorpio moon, like I do, that's not a comfortable place for the moon compared to if you have the moon in like Cancer. That's going to be a much more comfortable place for the moon to be. But does that mean that a Scorpio moon is bad? Absolutely not. It means that it can be more challenging when it comes to learning about your emotions and processing your emotions and really understanding and exploring your own emotional world. But it's not a bad thing. Like, there are good things for it as well. You're really intuitive. Scorpio moons, like, there's such a depth to your emotions that a lot of people won't understand. And I mean, I guess that can be like negative as well, but you know what I mean. Like, there are always negatives and positives to every single placement that exists. Okay. And when you are asking, like, is this a good placement or is this a bad placement? You're kind of putting yourself in a very tight binary perspective in terms of like, okay, well, this is good and this is bad. And then it's almost like, if I have more bad placements than good, does that mean I just have a bad chart, right? Like, that's not how astrology works. Do you think that humans are either more bad or more good? Like, we all have negative and positive things within us. Your chart is not either a prize or like a punishment, okay? And again, this is usually rooted in a lot of fear because it's the fear of like, am I going to be lovable enough? Am I worthy enough? Or am I like doomed? We don't do that when we're practicing ethical astrology, when we're practicing empowering astrology. And another fact that I want to make is when you are labeling a placement of yours as bad, that essentially is rejecting yourself. Because every single placement that we have represents a different facet or a different side of ourself, of our energy. So if you're like, oh, my Scorpio moon is bad, I need to fix it, you're essentially repeating a narrative and a story of like, oh, I'm not good enough because this is bad. I don't like this part of me. I'm rejecting this part of me. I'm shaming this part of me. So if you are wanting to grow and you are wanting to reach a level of self-acceptance, how do you think that is supposed to happen when you are literally rejecting parts of yourself? So there's no good or bad. Just get that out of your brain, throw it in the bin. And I know it can be uncomfortable because it's like, oh my God, well, if it's a binary of good or bad, that makes things a lot easier. But hello, we are talking about your blueprint. We are talking about energy here. It is not easy. It is a deep exploration of all the things that make you who you are. And you are so complex and so unique in yourself. So how can you think that this art is easy and just like, oh, it's good or oh, it's bad? There's no good or bad. There's always a light and a shadow to everything. Every placement holds its own lesson and its own gift. There are things we have to learn in each placement of ours. Not to mention, just because a placement, someone says that a placement is good, quote unquote good, doesn't mean that it's actually nurtured healthily for you. So I guess this is like assumption 2.5 here, okay? People say like, oh, my astrology chart says this, and so I must be like this. That's not true at all. Your astrology chart is only half of the picture. The way you were brought up, your patterns, your conditioning, your early childhood experiences, your life experiences, that's going to make up for the other 50%. And I would argue like more than your chart itself. Your chart is your nature. Your nurture, a lot of the time, will override what your nature says. A big part of this journey is like coming back into your nature and seeing like, oh, the things that I previously shamed myself about is actually a core part of my nature. It's actually such a beautiful expression of my energy. So there you have it. No good or bad, okay? And this kind of links me to the next assumption is catastrophizing. So it can be so easy to spiral when you go down this path. It's like, oh my God, I have, again, like Saturn in my 7th house, I'll never find love or something like that. I have so many red lines in my chart, my life is going to be doomed. I have, whatever else it is. And there are astrology sites that catastrophize a lot, and I would never ever recommend them to anyone. But basically, this again comes from fear. Like, do you see how all of these things are coming from a very fear-based version of astrology? And it keeps you very disempowered because it locks you into that fear. It locks you into that fatalism. It locks you into like, oh, because I have moon in my eighth, like I can't do this or else this negative thing is going to happen. Okay, that's just not true. And a lot of the time, social media really plays into this because when you're on social media, you want people to watch your content. Your content needs to grab attention. And when you are able to give such a sure statement, like if your Saturn's in the seventh house, you're never going to find love, like that really catches people's attention because they're like, oh my God, I have that. Like, what's going to happen to me? But that's like, again, astrology is complex. That's not the whole story. And even though, yes, there are astrologers who, they might start off with something attention grabbing and then give you more of the nuance, a lot of people just run with that first sentence and then they're like, oh my God, this so-and-so said this, and then it gets taken out of context and like everything, okay? So basically, again, I'm just kind of repeating myself here, but like, there's no placement that will say that you are doomed for life in any way. Okay, your chart reflects energy. It doesn't reflect outcomes. It's kind of the same as like, when you get a tarot reading and the reader is simply reading whatever path you are currently on, whatever your energy is leading you towards, that's what they're reading. It's not set in stone. It's not a specific outcome that is definitely going to happen. Because if you don't like it, just change your energy, change what you're doing. That's going to change the path that you're on. And it's similar to astrology where it's like your chart is not the outcome of what has to happen in your life. We have hard placements. Each one of us has something challenging in our charts. Even if our charts are so easy, that's a challenge in and of itself. Because when things are so easy, how are you growing? What are you going to do to grow? What are you going to do if you're faced with something challenging, right? Like we all have challenging things. It is part of our human experience. And I feel like a lot of people miss that fact and they go into like, well, I want to work on my spirituality and somehow that equates to like transcending the 3D. But it's like we live on Earth. We have to understand the 3D. We have to understand our human experience. This is not about learning astrology to reach some kind of goal. And once I master it, my whole life is going to be easy. That's just not going to happen. Okay, if you're learning astrology so that the rest of your life can just be one easy thing, that's just not going to happen. I'm going to tell you right now. We are all going to go through challenging periods of our life, right? Like me, I've been learning, I've been teaching, I've been mentoring astrology. There are things in my life that I go through. My life is not going to be just easy because I know it. It's going to be easier. It's going to be a lot easier because I know what's happening to me right now. What are the things that I need to focus my energy on? What part of my chart am I disregarding or maybe I've been neglecting even, and I need to really push into that energy. But your chart is here to really guide you through what you're going through. It's not here to just move all the obstacles out of the way and be like, okay, here is like the magic solution, the magic answer. Nothing is ever going to give you that because it is your life. You have to live it, you have to walk it. So astrology essentially is walking you back to yourself, right? Our harder placements, again, they are here to help us grow. They're not punishments. They're really here as portals for lessons, for our evolution. And again, the whole point of astrology is for us to actually make sense of our human existence and come to an acceptance of our human existence. Okay, let's go on to assumption number 4, which is using astrology to excuse toxic patterns and toxic behaviors. Like, people are like, oh, I can't do that because I'm this sign, or like, I can't do that because I have this in this planet in this placement. Like that is just spiritual bypassing at some point. I feel like I've made a lot of posts around this, but it's like astrology gives you permission to be yourself. It gives you permission to be like, oh yeah, that's a flaw that I have, and that's a pattern I know I can sink into, but it's not really an excuse for you to stay there if you know it's unhealthy and you know it's toxic. Okay, so one thing that we do not do in my space is we do not weaponize astrology to justify crappy behavior and avoid accountability. Because yes, again, we can be like, oh, I'm a Scorpio moon, and that's why sometimes, like, when I'm in conflict or I'm in a disagreement, I don't really know what to say because I'm really slow in processing everything because I feel everything really deeply. But that's like, I'm not gonna be like, okay, that's why, like, you can never get angry at me or something like that. That's why I can never talk to you about what's going on. We still need to understand our patterns. We still need to be able to find ways of moving through our patterns and even shifting our patterns if they're not in the healthy embodiment of that placement for us. So they show us our patterns, our placements in our chart will show us our patterns, but what we do with that information, that is our choice. If you want to stay in toxic patterns, that's not because of your chart, okay? That's because you don't want to change. That's what I'm going to say. That's what I'm going to say. Next, making judgments about the signs. Oh my gosh. There was this one time where I had someone being like, I really hate, I think it was like Libras or something. And like, I really hate Libras. Like they just suck and they're this and that. I looked at their chart and guess what? They had some placements in Libra. So all I'm saying is you can form an idea of certain signs based on your experiences with them, of course, but just whittling it down to like, oh, this is what all Libras must be, or this is what all Capricorns must be, that really is like, no, okay, that's a no-no. And trust me, for me, this is one of the things that I learned in the very beginning. Because do you know what my big three are? My big three is Gemini, Scorpio, and Capricorn. Okay, arguably three of the signs that gets the most hate and that is misunderstood the most. So one of my very first missions when I started learning astrology is understanding like, why do these signs get so much hate? And is it actually true? Because I'm like, I'm not trying to be like a shitty person. I want to help people, but like, how can I when everyone is saying supposedly my big three is crap and they suck? And it's like, well, actually, no, they're not. A lot of the time, we disassociate those signs with their more negative traits. And again, I'm not saying that negative side doesn't exist because it absolutely does. But like I said before, every single sign, every single placement has both its negative and its positive traits and characteristics. Also, that brings me to a point where the 12 signs are archetypal energies. And what that means is that we all actually have all 12 signs in our chart. So similar to if you're seeing one of your placements as bad, you're really rejecting a part of yourself. If you really have something against a particular sign, a lot of the time, it's a good bet that there's something deeper within you that you're shaming, or like there's something where that energy is really triggering something inside you, and that is where your shadow work needs to be. Okay. So when you hate on a sign, you are rejecting a part of yourself in a way, similar to how if you hate a particular placement of yours, or if you're seeing it as a bad thing, that's also self-rejection. So what I want you to think instead is signs in themselves don't give you the full picture. So you don't ever want to box people into stereotypes, into their signs, just like you don't want to be boxed into a stereotype of your sign. It's really important to learn what the signs actually mean beyond what pop astrology is telling you. Next assumption, number 6. This is assuming that astrology will determine your future and it can predict your future. I say this all the time. When will I get married? When will I make money? Where will I meet my partner? Astrology is not a prophecy. It's not predictive in that way. It tells you what kinds of energies and energetic cycles you are moving through. There is a really famous saying, I can't remember who it's by, but essentially it says, transits are an act of fate and how you respond to them is an act of free will. So essentially, whatever transits are moving, so the transits are like the planets moving in the sky and what it activates for you as they move. They are like an act of fate, right? Like we can't escape them because it's happening. However, how you respond is up to you. So for example, let's say you are someone who really wants to be in a relationship and you're like, I want to know like, when I can get married or when I can find someone that I really love and who really loves me. And let's say Jupiter, which is the planet of luck, is moving into your 7th house, which is the house of relationships and one-on-one relationships and marriage and things like that. Can that be a time when you find someone who you want to get married to? Yes. But is it going to happen? Yes, no, maybe. We don't know. Because if that's what you want and Jupiter moves into your 7th house, but then you are just staying indoors all day, you're not seeing anyone, you're just, being by yourself, like how is that supposed to happen? It's not going to happen. Okay, so your actions need to match whatever the transits are bringing and what you want out of those transits. So astrology is not predictive. That's why I don't do any predictions. It just doesn't happen. What I do though is I forecast. So this happens in my end of year forecast where depending on what my client wants to achieve in the next year, we'll look at timing together to be like, when are your actual windows and what actions do you need to do to really take advantage of those windows. One of my favorite client stories to tell is this lovely client who wanted to have a baby. And she had been told previously that because I think she doesn't have any planets in her 5th house or something, she was like, yeah, I've been told before, kids are just not in the picture for her. And I was like, that's a load of crap. So we looked at the year and I was like, look, you have some really beneficial things going into your house of children. Here are some windows. And guess what? She did fall pregnant during those windows and she has an amazing baby boy now. Do not think that astrology is like the be all end all. There are people who say like, this is going to be when these signs can earn a lot of money. If you're not going out there and you're not putting in the effort, how do you think that's actually going to happen? Like, be so for real, okay? Astrology is as amazing, but as amazing as it is, don't let it take you out of living your actual life. Like, come back to reality, okay? Don't let astrology or any form of spirituality or anything take you out of living the life that is actually here on earth, that is your life. So next, our final assumption has to do with compatibility. Ooh, this is a topic that I can talk about on and on and on and forever for, because no matter how many times I say it and I repeat myself, someone is going to ask me like, oh my God, but like, who am I compatible with? And I get this from my friends as well. And at this point, I just have to kind of laugh and be like, be so for real, come on. So compatibility, how does it work in astrology? So compatibility is a real thing, but it's also not, okay? Those compatibility charts that you find online on Google Images of like, is my sign compatible with this sign? That's all fun and games, but it absolutely is not the full picture. So in astrology, there is something called synastry, where we basically overlap your chart with someone else's, and it can tell you what is being activated within your relationship. So like, what do they activate within you? What do you activate within them? How do they make you feel? And vice versa. Now with synastry, it doesn't have to just be romantic relationships. It can also be like parental relationships, professional relationships, like between collaborators or between like a boss and an employee, right? It's any kind of one-on-one relationship that you can have. It can be friends as well, obviously. But within that compatibility, it's really important to know that everything in a chart, and this doesn't just go for compatibility, it's literally every single chart, it shows you the potential of what can be. So if we're looking at the positive sides, that is the positive potential, the highest potential of what this relationship can be like. However, like I said before, every single placement has both its positives and negatives. So it also can show you where are the challenges in this relationship. On that note as well, please do not stay in a relationship or break up simply because of what your astrology charts say. Like, that is silly, because an astrology chart, yes, it shows you the potential, but how is your relationship in real life? And again, coming back to like, what is your real life like? What is your real relationship like? And I'll use another example that will literally be like, okay, astrology compatibility is not the be all and end all thing that you're supposed to rely on for relationships. So my sign and my partner right now, our signs technically are not compatible. I'm a Gemini, he's a Pisces. Our signs are literally squaring each other, which is the harshest aspect you can have. And any kind of Google image that you find will be like, not compatible. But we're together. We're very happy together. We've been through our ups and downs, but we have worked through it. Now, me with my shitty ex, I'm a Gemini again. He was a Libra. Gemini and Libra typically are like, yes, super compatible. But that relationship was so toxic and so unhealthy. Okay, so never, ever, ever let astrology dictate what you decide to do or not do in your relationships. It can be a really, really powerful tool and a guide to help you understand more about each other and the ways that you influence each other and what you may need to give the other person more understanding in, and more grace in, and more compassion in. But it does not tell you the outcome of your relationship. There is nothing that will be like, oh yes, you guys will stay together forever. Okay, like, even if it's the most compatible chart on paper, let's say if like one person cheats, are you just gonna stay with them because my astrology chart said so? Like, listen to how silly that sounds. Like, never forget your own power. And that's really what my work, all of my work with astrology is aimed towards. If it is one word, it is all about your empowerment. So that is the 7 assumptions there that you need to just throw out of your mind and into the bin. And I want to finish off by saying that astrology is about remembering who you are. And all of these assumptions that we just talked about are really loud and pervasive, and it's really easy to listen to them and believe them because, again, they are easy. But easy is not what we're doing here. We're going deep. If we're really understanding ourselves and wanting to understand ourselves, there is a way of simplifying astrology and all of these complex topics without making it diluted and easy and absolute. Now, if you have fallen into any of these assumptions and believed them, that is totally okay. Like I said, I've been there as well, and I wish someone had sat me down like this and given me some tough love of being like, girl, like, your boyfriend or my ex is literally like not a good match for you. Why are you staying together? Just because your signs are supposed to match and they're supposed to be compatible? Like, come on, be so for real, right? So hopefully in this video, I'm giving you some tough love that you might need to hear in this moment. And I really hope that it can be a turning point for you to become more empowered in not just your astrology journey, but overall your self-growth and self-empowerment and self-acceptance journey. And again, that is my whole mission. I'm wanting to help you get back to your own power, your story, trusting yourself and your intuition, which is what astrology should do. So if you do want to learn how to read your chart in a way that is simple, like I said, but it doesn't dilute astrology and it doesn't make it just easy and absolute, that is literally why I created my Astrology Academy. I'll pop it in the description below so you can check that out. That is literally where I teach everything from the ground up in a structured way. So like we're doing addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and then, whatever comes next in maths, okay? I don't know why I use that example. I'm not even that good at maths. But basically, you get the point. We're not jumping straight into like calculus. So we're going step by step. It's structured. You can ask questions. It's self-paced as well. And it goes really, really deep. And it also, this is like my favorite part of my academy. It really brings in the embodiment piece. So you know how I talked about how a lot of astrology is like, okay, well now I know this about my placement, but like, what am I supposed to do with it? What does it actually mean for me? The embodiment piece is kind of that missing link. So I'm not gonna ramble too much on about that. You can go check it out if you're interested. But yes, that is all for this video. If you did believe in any of those assumptions, remember, throw it in the bin, okay? Rewatch this if you need to, because I know it took me a few times to be like, oh yeah, that really lands for me and I really need to adopt this new way of thinking. So yes, take your time with it and cheers until next time.